Hello, I'm
Right.
Lisa Adler. I'm co-artistic producing director here at Horizon Theater Company, and I am here with Andrea Young, who is the executive director of ACLU Georgia, as well as being an attorney, an author, a documentary filmmaker, and a professor at GSU in the Andrea Young School of Policy Studies. So welcome, Andrea. Thank you so much for joining us.
So great to be here with you, Lisa.
Andrea came to see our production of Roe, and because we did that production and it's now closed, we are still having this conversation because we are right now awaiting in the next 2 or 3 days a decision from the Supreme Court about Roe and what its fate will be in our country. So I'm having this conversation with Andrea to sort of give you the overview of how this impacts Georgia, how it might impact you, how it might impact our future, to have you the quick version of why does it matter to us. So I'm going to ask Andrea those questions and have her give us the expert opinion on that. So I guess my first question is so if Roe is overturned or severely diminished in some way, which are both our possibilities, what does that mean for Georgia? What's going to happen here?
Right. Well, as many of you all may remember, in 2019, the Georgia legislature and Governor Kemp passed a 6-week abortion ban. That ban is currently in the 11th Circuit. There is a stay on its implementation. The ACLU with Planned Parenthood and other organizations went into court, blocked this law from taking effect. So currently, it's important to know abortion is safe and legal in Georgia up to 20 weeks. So that's our current situation. The 11th Circuit is waiting for the Supreme Court's decision in Dobbs v. Jackson. That's the review of the Mississippi law, which places the limit of abortion at 15 weeks. So depending on how that decision comes down, the 11th Circuit will then render its decision into whether or not to lift the stay of Georgia's 6 weeks abortion ban, whether to leave it and proceed. So it very much depends on whether, Roe is essentially struck down or something more nuanced. So we're waiting to hear that.
And how does the 15-week versus 6-week, what do we know about what might happen related to that in terms of the number of weeks and what is likely to happen?
So the interesting option, which we thought it would be more likely that the Supreme Court would uphold the 15-week statute without necessarily doing this, full-throated condemnation of Roe. The Alito draft, the draft that was leaked from the Supreme Court from Justice Alito, clearly, looks like a pathway to essentially, to getting rid of Roe and saying it's no longer precedent. So if the Supreme Court allows the Mississippi statute, which is currently would be considered a violation of Roe because it restricts abortion pre-viability, right? Which is the most important feature of Roe, is that pre-viability, the pregnant woman, her family, they make the decision. Post-viability, Roe says the state has more interest. Now, one of the important things about Roe, and I guess we'll get to that later, is it stands for the proposition that it's the pregnant woman who decides, right? And that goes both ways, decides whether to continue the pregnancy, whether to end the pregnancy. And so Roe has also been used to protect women from forced abortion and forced sterilization. So this issue of bodily autonomy goes both ways because the government especially has in the past attempted to control the fertility, particularly of Black or women with disabilities, and force them to be sterilized, force them to have abortions against their will.
Wow. So, and how fast do you think this will happen? Is there how fast is this 11th Circuit likely to act?
We're thinking, it could be, 30 days before this sort of filters through the system. The We are looking at, other alternatives. As I said, the current law that is in effect in Georgia is 20 weeks, and we will be using every, tool in our toolkit to keep that the standard. Obviously, if the Supreme Court says that it's 15 weeks, they allow, without sort of going into other condemnations of Roe, then we have a much stronger argument to make that 6 weeks obviously falls far short, of the 15-week level that was set in Mississippi.
And who is most impacted by this law? Who will suffer the most, do we think?
Well, of course, the United States now, is a patchwork of abortion access. Women in Georgia have had fairly good access to abortion. We have access to abortion, not just in Metro Atlanta, but Augusta, Columbus, Savannah, around the state. Obviously, the women who are most in need of abortions for economic reasons are also the ones who will be find it most difficult to access abortion out of state. So there are many states, California, Illinois, New York, that are setting themselves up to be kind of, abortion access points for women from other states. But if we, but of course, there are women who can't leave, their job for two or 3 days without being fired. There are people who don't have the resources, the oft-cited statistic, there are so many people in our country that can't get $500 in an emergency. We are looking at, obviously, low-income women, which in Georgia are disproportionately, Black women, that already can't access abortion through the only healthcare that they have, which is under the Medicaid system. So then they also will be least likely to be able to access abortion and are already most at risk from continuing a pregnancy. So the rate of maternal mortality in Georgia for women who do complete a pregnancy is 6 times. For Black women, it's 6 times the rate of white women nationally. So one of the consequences of ending Roe will be an increase in maternal mortality, as the very women who cannot access prenatal care, who cannot get off work to take care of themselves, who don't have leave after a pregnancy, they are also the most likely to suffer, not when they can't get an abortion, from serious medical consequences, including death, as a result of being forced to continue a pregnancy that they did not want.
And what about women that have a pregnancy that they don't want to continue because the baby is severely deformed, or somebody that is going to has a miscarriage? What are the implications, if any, that we think are around that?
Well, I will tell you one of the things we have on our website is a series of conversations with physicians about why this matters, even to people who, don't anticipate that they would ever, personally seek an abortion, is that this also compromises many other aspects of women's healthcare. My daughter's pregnant right now. One of the things you want to know when you're pregnant is that you are in charge of what happens. And if something, even in a wanted pregnancy, unfortunately, things do not always go as planned. And so is the woman in the driver's seat as decisions are made. And unfortunately, there's a grave concern that even in the situation of wanted pregnancies, when there are many medical complications, things that could endanger, or impair the health of the woman or make it unlikely that, you know, the fetus will be ever develop into a healthy baby, that the physician can be compromised and not be able to give them accurate information about their options or recommend the right course of action. There are some physicians who are beginning to leave, even states like Florida, where they have a non-medical script that they're forced to tell women about abortion and pregnancy and so forth. And physicians are saying, I'm not willing to say things that are medically inaccurate. And so it really, it compromises the health. You know, there are women who want to have a pregnancy, but they have an underlying health condition, a heart disease or diabetes or, hypertension. These things can be exacerbated even in a wanted pregnancy. And sometimes the decision needs to be made to protect the health of the woman, that the pregnancy is really not in her interest to continue the pregnancy.
And what other ways, if this law changes, what other things might it affect? What other rights might be impacted by a change to Roe?
So Roe is part of a sequence of decisions that involve the right to privacy. Prior to Roe, there was a decision in Griswold about access to contraception. Based after Roe, decisions were made on privacy. As I said, that Roe was used to cite the principle that the government cannot force an abortion, cannot force sterilization on people. Obviously, the right to privacy has been used as a foundation for marriage equality. So there are a number of issues. I mean, Roe really stands for the position that, that citizens in America have rights that the government cannot overstep, and that there has to be a balancing test between the rights of the individual and the interest of the government in any particular situation. You take out Roe, which is a 50-year precedent. I mean, Roe has been the law, has been governing for 50 years. It was reaffirmed in the 90s with Sandra Day O'Connor, a Reagan appointee, writing the decision and talking about how women in our society depend on Roe and depend on the right to control their fertility, that's been instrumental in the progress that women have made in our society since Roe was decided. So, there's sort of a sense that a court that would toss out a 50-year precedent, you can't then say what they won't do. I mean, rolling back a right that is so much a part of how people live their lives, the decisions that they are able to make. I just read an article, a heartbreaking article about a young woman who was trying to get an abortion in Texas right as their 6-week ban came down. She's now an 18-year-old with twins living in a basement with a guy who makes $9 an hour. And so these are the kinds of things. Women who seek abortions and are denied, they and their children are far more likely to live in poverty than women who are able to have the abortions that they seek. Because what does that mean, right? It means you can finish your education. It means it means you keep a job, because the same states that are not protecting a right to abortion also don't protect your right to be pregnant. So, we're right now in litigation in Georgia trying to protect a woman's right to, while she's pregnant, go to her prenatal visits, right? Keep her appointments so that she and the baby that she wants can be healthy. That right is not protected in Georgia and these other states that are they want to force women to be pregnant, but they don't want to protect the women and the babies once they are born. We don't have good childcare. We don't have, again, women, we don't have family medical leave that's paid for. So this state is doing precious little to support women who choose to have a family. And now they want to force people to do it. It's just unconscionable.
So if something happens, and you disagree with this decision, what can you do what can the average person do?
Well, one of the things we can do in Georgia, because this issue will then be returned to the states. So in Georgia, we have an election coming up in November. There are choices between pro-choice candidates, particularly in the positions of governor and attorney general. And there are candidates running who supported and in fact, instigated the six-week abortion ban. And so people have a very important choice to make. And I would encourage people to lift up this issue in your decision-making, that if this is something you are concerned about, access to reproductive health care, that this is something you should really interrogate candidates about before you vote for them. Local district attorneys, as well, will have decisions to be made. I think the Atlanta Council has just, issued a resolution saying that if Roe were to fall, that any kind of analysis around any kind of prosecution should be, at the lowest priority. And we've had some district attorneys, I think Sherry Boston and DeKalb, that have said, they will not prosecute under the 6-week ban. So, local elected officials, statewide officials, your state legislature, because the state legislators are the ones who passed the 6-week ban. And it would be, so it's very important to interrogate this issue for candidates who are seeking your vote. So that's one very important thing that can't be overstated in this state. The other thing is we will use, all of the legal theories that we can bring to bear to continue to fight this in the federal courts if possible, and then also to go to the state courts. Yeah. And you can contribute to abortion funds, right, for women who will have to travel out of state, to make that available and support support access for the women who are most at risk from a decision like this, the ones who already have very little access to healthcare. And little access to support the families they have, because at least half the women who seek abortion are already trying to parent young children.
Well, we will have both on our website and at the end of this video some resources people can go to if they want to help, or the ACLU's website. You have lots of resources, I think, on your website as well about information. Yes. About all these issues that we're talking about today. We have them on our website and have some previous conversations with people and specific ways people can help and links like that. We'll have that available. Anything you want to say to people as you close out this conversation? Like what do you want to leave people with?
Yeah. Well, as I reiterated, I mean, the ACLU, our argument in Sister Song v. Kemp is that this is a reproductive justice issue. And so the choice that's allowed in Roe is whether to continue a pregnancy or not. And that in Georgia, too often this decision may be based on, economic circumstances that the state of Georgia could do something about. Our state should be supporting women and pregnant people who are choosing to have continue their pregnancies, to have or expand families. And the state of Georgia does very little to support our young families. So the point of our brief in Sister Song v. Kemp, challenging the 6-week abortion ban, is that Georgia should be supporting, women, citizens of this state, in the choices that they want to make, whether or not to have a family or expand a family. And the state, while limiting abortion rights, has also not done very much to support the women who are trying to have healthy pregnancies, who are trying to expand families, who are trying to, continue their pregnancies. And so I would just urge everyone, we are in an election year, right? Make those questions part of how you are looking and evaluating candidates. Understand that there is going to be, that the decision that we make in November will have an incredible impact on what happens to women, whether, in terms of reproductive health care, in terms of access to abortion, and also in terms of access to the resources that families need to raise healthy, happy children. And so by all means, remember that we have an election. These choices are made, these decisions about access to reproductive health care are made by the legislature, they're made by the governor. Make that part of how you are evaluating these candidates, and make sure people in your circle and network are doing so. Because, democracy is a participatory sport. You're either at the table or on the menu. So if your issues are important to you, these issues are important to you, make sure you get out there and support and advocate for candidates who share your views of these important issues.
That's really great. Yeah, I got great advice from somebody from the Feminist Women's Health Center who said, we think that your one email or your one phone call is not really going to do any good, but on the state level, that's just not true.
That's not true.
If your representatives get 6 or 8 emails or phone calls about an issue, they know something's happening, and that makes a difference. So just encouraging people not only to vote, but to advocate on behalf of specific bills. And they also suggested advocate on behalf of just maternal rights in general.
Absolutely.
So that maternal health and maternal rights, no matter, if we don't know what the bill is, make your representatives know that that's important to you as one of their constituents.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. I mean, there's a sense in which some of our legislators are like the dog that caught the bus. They really were not intending for this 6-week abortion ban to become law in Georgia. They thought they were getting a free vote because of Roe. And so even people you might not expect can be moved if they know that important members of their constituency are very concerned about this measure. So this is a political process. The 6-week abortion ban, was something passed by the legislature. It can be changed by the legislature. And so absolutely make your voice heard on these issues.
Thank you so much, Andrea. It's really been a wonderful tutorial on what's coming. Maybe by the time people see this, there will be a decision. I'll know specifically what's happening, but your wisdom is very helpful and will help guide people in their decisions. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.